What is going on, you guys? This is Tyler Patrick. I'm your wandering therapist. And Rooster, what are you doing, bud? Rooster's just trying to climb the cliff that I'm up against right now. For some reason, must be some animals or something up there. But I'm just out day after Christmas running my dog, helping him look for animals, and just wanted to stop and get another installation of Wholehearted in with you guys today. It's been about a month since we've last posted our last episode. And a lot of that's because of my fault. I had hip surgery done about 3 weeks ago, and I've been kind of down and out and not really able to get up and do a lot for the last 3 weeks. But I'm happy to be back with you. It's a beautiful day out here today. Got some snowflakes falling. The nice, pretty, soft, big kind that you hope come around Christmas time. And I hope you've had a wonderful holiday season. It's been a great season for me. Being able to be with my family, being able to spend time with good friends, taking some time to ponder the good things in life, the things that I'm grateful for, the people that make a difference in my world. And I want you to know that a lot of you who are watching this are those people that make a difference for me, and I'm grateful for what you do to support me, and hope you know how much I really appreciate everything that you do to make my life richer. Today, I wanted to share a few stories that have happened over the last few weeks to drive home a couple of points about a concept of wholehearted living that I think we know, but we don't often address very well. And so I just want to share a couple of stories. And before I share those stories, I want you to ask yourself, what in your life do you do, whether you do it some type of activity, maybe it's something you eat, maybe it's something else that you do in your life. What do you do to avoid pain that might actually be causing you more struggle in the long run, even though temporarily it might feel better? And I'll share with you a couple of stories. The first one happened about a month and a half ago. I was taking my two oldest daughters down to Arizona for the Nike cross-country race. That was the regional race that they have down there in Arizona. And as I was getting ready to go get on our flight, I decided to kind of try to unplug myself from all of my devices and see if I could just connect to the people around me on the airplane. And so I turned my phone off before I got on the airplane, and I waddled down the aisle, and of course I was assigned the middle seat, which is always, a phenomenal thing for us, right? Because those seats are like cramming you in like packed sardines, and then you just hope that you're sitting by people who will kind of try to respect personal space, but there's never any personal space anyway, because that's just how the airplanes are, right? So I come down to my aisle and I realize I'm in the middle seat, and I look and I see that the people that I'm going to be sitting next to me seem friendly enough, and I have my phone put away, so I climb over the guy sitting next to me and I sit down in my seat and I say hi to him. He says hi back. He's a really kind of young, business looking kind of a man, really sharp looking, looks like he can just kind of looks like he has all of his stuff together. And then the woman sitting next to me was same, younger, probably mid-30s, business attire. You could tell they were on some type of a business trip or something, and she was kind and cordial and said hi as well. And so as soon as I sat down, both of them threw their armrests down so that we all had our own little sections. And then the woman that I was sitting next to, she just plugged in her earphones, and she put her head back on a pillow, and she kind of turned towards the window that she was sitting by, and she just kind of checked out. And so I thought, well, that's probably not going to be someone I'm going to be talking to much on the flight. And so I turned to the other guy and I said hi to him, and I started to talk to him for a second. And as I was talking to him, he did the same thing. He put in his headphones, and then he had an iPad up against the backrest of the airplane seat, and then he also had a phone. And instantly, even before we took off, he was back and forth between his iPad, which was playing some type of an action movie, and then on his phone. And of course, when you're squished so close to people, you can't help but see things. And so I was kind of just watching him on his phone, because I was sitting there staring into nothing, and he started to scroll from his phone, and he opened up his phone, and there's this beautiful picture of a family, him with what looked like his wife and a couple of little girls. And I thought, oh, that's really awesome. And then he unlocked his phone and he started scrolling all of his social media. And he scrolled social media for a few minutes, and then he flipped over to his messaging, and I noticed that on his messaging he actually was messaging what looked like 3 or 4 different women. And it wasn't the kind of messaging that was like business messaging. It was the kind of messaging that you hope you never see, especially a therapist like me who works with people who are having affairs. But I could tell that this man was having multiple affairs on this beautiful wife and children that I just seen on his phone. And so he messaged all of these women, and then he'd scroll back to social media, and then he jumped over and started scrolling some pornography, even right in front of me. Looked at pornography for a few minutes, and then he went back and he just started kind of playing this dance. And the rest of the flight was this dance between messaging these women, scrolling social media, looking at pornography. The only time he took a break was when the drink cart came by and he had a couple of hard drinks at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, probably just to take the edge off of the flight or something, I don't know. But what occurred to me as I was sitting there thinking about things, especially the things that we do here and the things that we're working on with Wholehearted Living, is that this man represented a large portion of what our business world looks like today. And it made me stop and pause. What is it about his life that leaves him in a rut? And obviously he probably didn't think he's got a problem yet, and he maybe not have a problem until his wife finds out, whenever that's going to happen, and then there's definitely going to be some growing opportunities. But what is it about the life that he's living? What is it about the lives that we live that leads us to need to be in constant motion, doing all of these things that, for all intents and purposes, numb us? In a matter of a 1-hour flight, he had used social media, he had used movie media, he had used pornography, he'd used music, and he had used alcohol. All of these things to numb whatever it was that he was trying to numb. Maybe it was boredom. Why is it that he couldn't be quiet in his own mind? What is it that prevents us from stopping and pausing on an hour flight and being able to talk to our neighbor and have a new experience, or even experience just what it means to be on a 1-hour flight? The problem with living this way is it becomes the way that we live in general, and we begin this chase of constantly numbing. And as we constantly numb, what we don't realize is that while we might be getting entertainment, we might be staying occupied, we might be even actually having a good time, the habit that we're forming takes us away from real connection with the real world that we're living in, with real people. And it begins to be this medicine that dulls all of our senses, it dulls our hearts, it dulls our emotions, it dulls our ability to have creativity, it dulls our ability to stop and pause and be connected with ourselves. And so I got off the flight, and I started thinking about the people I work with. And then I caught myself and I thought, Tyler, what are you doing? Like, you do so many of these same things that you're here judging this man on the airplane for. And I realized that it's true. I sometimes have unhealthy relationships with my social media and with food, and in the past with other things, maybe pornography or other substances. And it made me realize that this is just kind of the world we're living in. So flash forward a couple weeks, fresh after my hip surgery. The surgery went really well. The doctor said it would be a faster surgery than the last surgery for healing, that I should be really excited about it. I felt great right after the surgery. I felt like I could just walk out of the hospital right then. And then the doctor gave me some medicine to take, and I was supposed to take some different kinds of pills, little baby aspirin to keep my blood thin to avoid blood clots. But then he also gave me something called Tramadol, which is supposed to be a synthetic painkiller that is non-opioid based, because of course they don't want people using a bunch of opioids these days. And so he told me to take my Tramadol every 4 to 6 hours, and I started doing that. And of course, I didn't feel any physical pain. So I went home, no physical pain. But over the course of the next 3 or 4 days, I started to have these symptoms come up where I wasn't feeling any physical pain. And every time I started to feel any physical pain, I would just take my Tramadol and it would go away. By the 3rd day, I was having hallucinations. I was having headaches. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't even keep up a conversation. I tried to go back to work about 4 days after surgery. I got 2 appointments into my 6-hour day, 6 appointments, and I had to call and cancel the rest of my appointments because I literally thought that I was having a mental breakdown. I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't keep a rational thought. I felt like I was going crazy. I felt almost like I was being pulled into a different dimension, maybe a bad acid trip or something. And so I called my doctor and I explained all of my symptoms, and I was really afraid that maybe this was something mental that was going on for me. And he sort of chuckled over the phone and he said, "Oh, that sounds like a typical bad response to your Tramadol. You might want to just stop taking the Tramadol." And so I stopped taking the Tramadol. The rest of the day I still felt really off and fuzzy, but by the next morning my head started to come back and I started to have clearness again. I started to be lucid. And by the second day after being off Tramadol, I was totally back to feeling like I was normal. And I started to think about that in context of what I just told you about the story with the guy on the airplane, and started thinking about all of the ways that my life is spent avoiding pain. And in a lot of ways, I avoid pain at a cost that comes much higher later on. And so in this instance, I was taking Tramadol to avoid a little bit of physical pain from an incision, and it did do that at the cost of leading to me feel like I was going totally crazy. How many of us have other things in our lives that we're doing the same thing with? I was thinking about a friend of mine. He's probably not even 40 years old yet. He's got diabetes, and he hasn't managed his diabetes very well, and he just last year had some of his toes amputated. And this principle came through to me thinking about him and his life, where he's known for years that he could manage diabetes. He could probably even get rid of his diabetes simply by the right working out and the proper food regimen in his life, which would ultimately only help him feel happier and feel more confident. And yet, because of the pain that comes of having to do that work, it's easier to just maintain the same unhealthy diet and the same unhealthy living patterns, to the point that years down the road, he's losing his toes to the disease of diabetes. Thinking about finances, especially maybe this time at Christmas time, we all like to blow it out for the people that we love at Christmas time, but how many of us are actually living in a fiscal way that is responsible enough to be able to do those things at Christmas without having to dip in and hurt ourselves later on in the year, and have those debts eventually a little bit at a time pile up till 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road? We find ourselves in a hole and we feel more pressure because we were unwilling to do what was necessary and have a little bit of pain up front and tell ourselves no financially. I do this all the time with food, like a good hot lamp at the gas station. You guys know I'm a sucker for that. But what price am I paying now in the long run to be able to have the enjoyment of the satiation that comes from having the hot lamp food? And this Christmas season, this holiday season, especially as we start to move towards looking at the new year, there's arguments about whether or not New Year's resolutions are good or not. We can maybe do a different episode on that sometime. But as you're contemplating your own lives and the things that are good in your lives, I would submit to you that the things that are the best in your life, like my life, are the things that ultimately lead to pure and true connection with people, with ourselves, with nature, with God. If we're avoiding pain for the simple solution, if we're constantly scrambling to avoid any discomfort, we miss a multitude of opportunities for connection and richness and joy. So contemplate those things in your own lives. I'm definitely going to sit down. I'm in the current space of trying to create my new goals and my new targets for my ongoing growth in the year. And some of them will include some of these patterns that I'm finding in my own life, where I'm seeking to avoid the pain right now and maybe having it cost me more in the future. Challenge you guys to do that yourselves. I hope you guys have had a wonderful holiday season. I know that sometimes holidays can be hard as well as joyous, depending on the stages and phases of our lives. And I just want you to know that that I appreciate the work that I see you doing in your own lives, that I can empathize with those who may be struggling through the holiday season, that sometimes we have down seasons, but they don't stay. It's just a part of life that comes with the ups and downs of our normal day-to-day living. And even in the dark times, there can still be rays of joy and richness. And hope you guys are doing well. I'm glad to be back in the saddle. And you guys have a great New Year's coming up. We'll talk to you later.